There is a test that can tell if someone has no conscience. Governments use it. Psychiatrists trust it. Courts rely on it. It's called the Psychopathy Checklist. Imagine a man so charming, so handsome, and so polite that he was a law student and a rising star in politics. This was Ted Bundy. He didn't look like a monster. He looked like a movie star. But behind that perfect smile, he was hollowed of conscience.
He didn't look like anybody's notion of somebody who would tear apart young girls.
My name is Ted Bundy. I've never spoken to anybody about this. I am looking for an opportunity to tell the story as best I can.
I was in a secondary role covering his murder trial for the 1978 Chi Omega murders. That was of 2 sorority sisters and also attacking 3 other young women that same night in Tallahassee.
Bundy used his superficial charm to lure victims, proving that the most dangerous predators don't look scary. They look like us. Our investigation begins with a strange riddle. In the early 2000s, hundreds of top scientists received a mysterious book called Being or Nothingness. The book looked very expensive and had a famous mind-bending drawing on the cover. Inside, it was full of strange puzzles and many empty pages. It actually made people obsessed. Top scientists spent years trying to find a hidden message in what was just a very smart prank. Brilliant minds spent years trying to decode it, fearing it was a secret message. It was actually a psychological prank by a Swedish psychiatrist named Petter Nordlund. This shows how the sane world can become obsessed with madness, and how one eccentric mind can manipulate the intellectual elite on a global scale. To move from mystery to science, we use the gold standard, the Hare Psychopathy Checklist, PCL-R. This 20-item test identifies people with a specific type of behavioral deviance. To give you an idea of the scale, a normal person usually scores only a 4 or 5 on this test. But to be called a psychopath, you need a score of 30 or higher. This checklist isn't just a list of bad things. It's a map of a human who literally has no conscience, grandiose sense of self-worth. Bernie Madoff. He ran a $50 billion fraud, believing he was smart enough to never be caught by the system.
He compartmentalizes, goes to the commissary, does his job, doesn't think about it. At night he says he has horrible nightmares. And then he says, I understand why clients hate me. The gravy train is over. I can live with that. The average person thinks I robbed widows and orphans. I made wealthy people wealthier.
Pathological lying and manipulation. Al Dunlap, a famous CEO known as Chainsaw Al. He used his power to ruthlessly fire thousands of people for personal gain. Lack of remorse or guilt. Elizabeth Holmes. Even after her company's fraud was exposed, she showed no apology or guilt for the patients she put at risk.
She just talks in a normal voice.
In an interview with People magazine from the Texas federal prison where she served nearly 2 years of her sentence for defrauding investors in her billion-dollar startup, Holmes saying, quote, "It's been hell and torture to be here."
That our valuation is what matters here. What matters here is the integrity of our data and being able to demonstrate that and continuing to execute on this model that we've created and show that we can realize a shift in this space.
Psychopathy is not just a choice. It is a neurological condition. The most famous discovery by Dr. Robert Hare is that psychopaths do not feel fear like you do.
We can describe a psychopath or psychopathy as a clinical construct characterized by a cluster of characteristics and features. And the cluster would include interpersonal characteristics, how we deal with other people, how the individual interacts with somebody else, affective characteristics, feelings, emotions.
In a scientific test, normal people showed high distress and sweating when waiting for an electric shock. Their skin stayed dry and their heart rate stayed steady. Their amygdala, the brain's emotional center, simply does not fire. Some experts describe this as having the soul of an insect. It means they are totally disconnected from human feelings. Because they don't feel anxiety or fear like we do, they can stay perfectly calm even while doing something terrible. This neurological blindness to fear explains why they can lie or commit crimes while staying perfectly calm. But the test can also be a dangerous trap. Meet Tony, an inmate at Broadmoor Hospital. To avoid a long prison sentence, he faked being mad. Once he was labeled a psychopath, everything he did was seen as a symptom. If he was polite, the doctors called it superficial charm. If he stayed away from violent people, they called it antisocial. This raises the terrifying possibility that the system can become an inescapable trap for those who don't fit in. Can we fix a psychopath? In the 1960s, Dr. Elliot Barker tried to shatter their egos using LSD and sensory deprivation.
The last time Jim Motherall went through these gates, he was a prisoner on his way to Ontario's Oak Ridge Psychiatric Hospital for treatment. What he got instead, he says, was torture.
That's where it was, right there. This is a place that destroyed a lot of lives, including mine.
The inmates were locked in a small, windowless green room called the Total Encounter Capsule. Doctors kept them in there for days, sometimes with no clothes on. They were even given huge doses of LSD to try and break their minds, but it backfired completely. It didn't cure them. It made them more effective manipulators. They learned the language of emotion just to use it for better empathy training. Their rate of committing new crimes actually jumped from 60% to 80%. Psychopaths are not just in prisons. They make up 1% of the general population, but up to 4% of senior corporate executives. Albert Chainsaw Dunlap. He viewed the world as a competitive landscape where only the strong survive. Dunlap lived in a giant house filled with statues of predators like lions, sharks, and eagles. He truly believed the world was a jungle where only the strong survive. To him, being cold-hearted wasn't a bad thing. Tea was just a way to win in business. He reframed psychopathic traits as leadership virtues. He called callousness just being decisive and grandiosity as being visionary. Martin Shkreli, the pharma bro who increased drug prices by 5,000%. His glib, mocking attitude toward patients showed a total lack of empathy.
Privilege against self-incrimination and respectfully decline to answer your question. I intend to follow the advice of my counsel, not yours. On the advice of counsel,
you can look away if you like, but I wish you could see the faces of people, no matter what Ms. Retzlaff says, who cannot get the drugs. And I truly believe, are you listening?
yes.
Finally, we must look at the industry that defines madness. The DSM manual has grown to define 374 different disorders. This diagnostic expansion has led to the overmedication of children. A 4-year-old girl died after being medicated for bipolar disorder, a condition many believe was just a normal stage of development. When we start to see everything as a symptom, we lose our ability to see the human being. Looking at the world today in 2026, we see these dark traits showing up more and more in power. When things get tense, people often mistake a leader's coldness for strength. This is dangerous because it allows people with no empathy to take control of our world. While we must stay vigilant against true predators, we must also protect the right to be eccentric without being labeled a monster. Psychopathy is a biological reality, but the PCL-R checklist should not be used as a weapon of social judgment. This has been a presentation by Report Crimes, an educational platform dedicated to the dark social sciences and mapping the human psyche. Most people spend years trying to learn these secrets, but here we provide 10 to 20-minute forensic studies on the books and clinical resources that will change how you see the world. If you want to understand the soul of the insect and protect the human soul, hit the subscribe button now. Don't forget to like and leave a comment. Have you ever encountered a snake in a suit? Join us for our next investigation. Stay informed. Stay safe.